Good morning. So I've been reading some books on role playing, and over the last few months, I've had a lot of not a lot, but I've had very little time in the evenings or the weekends, but I've had a lot of time in the mornings before work, before taking care of family and things like that, and so I've had time to ponder as Dell and I are starting work on our new role playing game. And I dawned on me, I've never really looked up the definition of role play. So I thought this morning I would look this up. And there's reasons for why I'm studying this stuff now. And it has very little to do with being a game designer. It has more to do with the last 2 or 3 years while writing Dark Age of Man and enjoying Dark Age of Man as a different style of role-playing game than what we normally do in the OSR, Joth, etc. with the guys, or other games that we have played along the way, Simba Room, etc. Barbarians of Basilisk, Barbarians of Lemuria, that I was slowly realizing, again, what I missed the most, or how do I say it? I was beginning to recognize maybe I either have changed in my attitude about the role as a player character, as a person, or I have evolved, maybe regressed. I don't know which, because it would be difficult for me to say as a fact when I was playing from 10 years old to 20 years old. Whether I was playing more like I do now, which I would guess I am. It's hard to know, to go back and look at yourself at 11 or 12 years old and know exactly. There was no way to self-reflect or remember. Even my memories of that would not be accurate because I GM'd 90% of the games that I played. I rarely played a character. All right. The point is this: I've been away for months, but I've been working on my sports games, and I've been sharing in the mornings what I can do for my sports games, my sport books, but I haven't been able to role play at all outside of authorship of a narrative of a sports contest while playing it, which in a way I feel is somewhat role play because I'm somewhat descriptive or taking on the persona of, say, a television commentator as I drop the dice for what I'm seeing in my head for the football game, right? So in a way, I'm role-playing a guy on the radio and explaining what I'm seeing in my head, right? So and Dell has said this before, that I'm very good at it, and I think that's because I'm actually role-playing someone who would be, seeing this and having to tell the world via radio what it is I'm seeing, so to speak, right? Okay. And is that role-playing? Okay. So anyway, long story short, I have been unable to role play for months and months and months, and of course that sucks because it's a huge part of my enjoyment in life, and I'm hoping to get back to it soon. But this morning I got up and I said, hey, I'm going to look up role play on Google and just see what the world has to say about this thing, role play. Now, I've role played as a manager teaching sales techniques. I would role play customers, I would role play being the sales manager on the floor, and I would tell the employee to come in and pretend to be, a customer and try to stick to what it is you think that customer is looking for. And I would walk them through the role of being a salesman, but then I would also flip reversals and etc. So I think many of us who have been in management have probably had to use some level of role play in training, right? But it's very direct. There is something you're attempting to teach through these concepts. Really, I think role play in the management field is also to just get someone experience without risk, right? I can say to a new employee, hey, don't worry, you've been studying these 9 points of sales. I'm going to walk you through this, and we're going to role play it out for a few days before you ever have to do this with a stranger, right? Because you want their ability to learn and fail to be less. You don't want them to become adverse to the out of in a way being untrained, right? Or out of being how do I say this? what's the term? Ill prepared, but you don't want them to get stage fright as salespeople, right? They have to become comfortable with the idea that someone may come in telling you they want to buy a car, but they're dickheads about buying a car, right? They come in telling you they want to buy a car, but then they act as if they've never in a million years. They say, why did you come in the door, right? You have to be capable of handling those people instead of looking them in the eye and saying, what the hell did you come in here for? You know what I mean? You have to treat them, and you have to find what it is. They may not even realize why they want that car, and they kind of resent you, or they want you to explain to them why they want that new car, or whatever it is, right? So, okay, way off track. But my point is, I understand role play, but I thought when it comes to gaming, right? Where am I at? Because there's no doubt what I have enjoyed as a player this last few years, and doing less GMing versus what it is I think, or I thought that role play was all about, right? As a GM, so to speak. Okay, so maybe this helps. I don't know. So the first thing that came up here is role play dictionary. It just says Oxford language, whatever. And of course, act out or perform a part of a person, character, for example, as a technique in training. Just talked about that. Participate in a role-playing game, and that's it. Just play one of 6 characters in a role-playing group. So then there are more. So I saw this one here. To act out a role, to represent an action. Students were asked to role-play thoughts and feelings with each other. Then I clicked on what is good definition of role-play. This is out of the Collins Dictionary. And I like this: the act of imitating the character and behavior of someone who is different from yourself. And I didn't highlight this; it popped up highlighted. But this is very much part of the motivation of a character when I role play. I'm trying to play and be authentic to someone that I'm not, or someone I'm told I need to be. So if somebody says, "Hey, Jason, I made a pre-made for you," and I read this pre-made, and there are behaviors attached to it based on the game mechanics, like say Savage Worlds would have mechanics maybe that would inform my role play. Ubiquity games generally have pointers to a character's personality, or and so those would cue me if they were a pre-made character, right? I'm supposed to be this kind of person. But I've always said this, and maybe people will remember back to the first days I ever came on YouTube. I was an actor, and I also was a role player, but acting was not role playing, right? And what I mean by that is, I think everybody at the table in certain, not everybody, in certain groups, those at the table that will imitate or act out a character throughout these sessions is appreciated by everybody there, because it's entertaining for everybody, and because it keeps us all focused on that there's something different between us looking at each other in our civilian clothes, with coffee mugs and pizza boxes and dice hitting the table, and maybe miniatures, maybe not miniatures, and this idea that no, we are transcending into this shared space. And so that's what I've always appreciated about attempting to act. But as I've said before, I'm more concerned about, as a role player, responding to all information as the character would, not as I would, not as Jason, the middle class, educated guy, right? That's hard to do. It's hard to remove yourself from the game portion of the making the right decisions. So I've said this before. This is where D&D, the original D20 OSR games, get in great conflict with that, because if I act like my character, I might wind up dead, and I play my characters authentically, and very often subject them to dangers that anybody playing old D&D would say, that's not smart play. You're not playing to survive, Jason. You're playing a bonehead. Well, my character has a 5 intelligence and a wisdom of 4. I'm going to play him like a bonehead. And so, but then I risk my character, and I risk the party, but I play it authentically, right? And there'll be people who say, no, That's not what we're doing here. Okay. And that took me a long time because I had not been a player. I came to YouTube, I began to play in groups, and I began to see there were two types of players. There were those who loved the fact that I would play a character no matter what that was. And then there were those that resented it because I risked the whole group. Or they thought I was somehow devaluing what they were trying to do. And it took me years to realize there really are two people, those that appreciate that I put the character before the game, and there are those that say, no, you need to play the character as if he recognizes, the situations. And so I've had to kind of evolve and learn this myself, right? Because nobody blatantly looked at me and said, dude, you're going to have to suspend your boneheaded character for the sake of the party in this. It wasn't because I was selfish. It was because I was role-playing. Okay. All right. Now, and I don't confuse whether I take on an accent as role-playing. There are those who can do that, and it's believable, and it doesn't breach the fourth wall for me. It doesn't ruin it for me when they do a bad accent. But I won't do an accent because I know it's only going to crack people up, and I don't want them pulled from it, right? I might affect the voice so they at least know it's not me speaking. Like I might talk a little deeper or a little higher or a little faster. I'll do something to affect speech so they know that's the difference between me speaking and my character speaking. Okay. So anyway, I read this, I say, okay, I kind of agree with that simple line. The act of imitating a character and the behavior of someone who is different from yourself. I move on down and see the act of imitation. I see it again here. And then I get down here and I click on, where's it at? What are the 4 types of role play, right? And this is more, this is more traditional, like teaching things, information gap, conflict, cooperative. This is more for helping people work through training. It's not really relevant to, information gaps going to occur in role-playing. Communication issues could occur. You're not going to role-play to fix that gap. The irony is you're going to create more information gaps when one person's speaking in character and the other people are speaking in, right? So this is really more for teaching examples of how to role-play to teach certain things. This would be something you would use for sales techniques, right? So that was irrelevant to gaming, I mean. Then how do you explain role-play to someone? Examples of role-play. Is there another term for role-play? What is considered role-play? And then this I thought was good. Wikipedia, I think it's the source here. The changing of one's behavior to assume a role. Now this is me. I prefer to play the character authentically through how he would react and act. Not so much in taking on a persona and speaking a particular way, right? Or putting on a costume, etc. Either unconsciously to fill a social role or consciously to act out an adopted role. And of course in role play we would be doing consciously to act out an adopted role, right? Okay. There you have it. So to fill a social role would be, again, me teaching, me taking on a customer persona so my employee can go through the sales techniques we've taught them to sell a gym membership, right? Okay. How do I role play? What are the 3 pillars? And then I saw this. Okay, what is this? Oh, right. This is more game mechanics. The social portion of a game, the exploration portion of the game, and the combat portion of the game. So I completely disagree with this. I think the 3 pillars, Gnome Stew. This is game mechanics. There's a social portion of the game where it's all about using social mechanics, devices, speech, etc. There's an exploration portion where we're moving through the dungeon and we're using certain skills and traits. And then there's the obvious, we're transitioning into combat. This is role play. This would be game mechanics defined. This has, to me, nothing to do with role play. But I don't disagree with this, but I don't think these 3 things have anything to do with what is role playing, right? It has to do with what does a role play game consist of. Well, there's 3 kind of mechanical phases with some games, right? Okay. So I don't disagree with it, but I don't think it really has anything to do with what is role playing, right? What is the difference between role play and acting? And then I found this, of course, when I first came to YouTube and talked about role playing, and had someone who had been an actor who had to memorize lines, hit a spot on the stage, recite his lines, etc. It is, you don't do that in role playing. There is no script in front of you. Now, maybe Critical Role, they had scripts, maybe they rehearsed. I don't know. I don't care. I doubt it. I think they're people role playing, right? But my point is, there has been some hint that it is scripted or whatever. I don't know enough. I don't watch Critical Role. I don't follow But I doubt it. I think they're all pretty darn good voice actors. They're all people who just want to have a good time, drop dice, and play a character. So, now whether that's how the average table looks in every basement in America, doubt it, right? Okay. Acting is pretending to be someone you aren't. Role-playing is embodying somebody you are not, right? Okay. So, I still say this. The problem with this definition is we are pretending. That's what we're doing when we game, when we role play. We're pretending. So we are pretending, and we are pretending to be somebody that we're not. And the problem here is, are we authentically going to stick with the decision-making process of that type of character, regardless of situation? I'm greedy. I want the big diamond, and the dragon is asleep, and it's literally nestled in the crook of the dragon's left nostril. And as a thief, I'm going to sneak up, and I'm going to use my ring of invisibility, and I'm going to try to steal that diamond out from under the nose of the dragon. And everybody in the group goes, "The fuck you are, you're going to get us all killed," right? But that's what my greedy thief will do, right? That's, to me, role-playing. And that's adventure, because if I wake the dragon, we got one hell of an adventure on our hands. If I don't, we have a story to tell. Holy shit. Barnabas, the thief, stole this diamond, and we're on the run with this epic rock that where it's going to make us all rich, right? Is that not the stories we want to tell? Or we tell the tale of Barnabas, unfortunately, making too much noise, climbing the mound of coins, and wakes the dragon, right? So my point is, we are pretending. This is part of what the problem is. I think why people can't relax and role play is, as children, we do this. This is so easy. We have zero issues with imagining and pretending as children. It's when the adult gets in the way and says, "Hey, man, I'm playing a child's game. I feel a little self-conscious." But we're pretending to embody someone we're not. Because I'm not actually turning into Aragorn. I'm not actually going to, and I've played with people who can get so heavy into it that they're a little scary. There's a little delusion going on, and you say, "Okay, this guy makes me nervous. I don't think he's always," you would call this, they would call this method acting in Hollywood, right? The guy that gets so in character that for 6 weeks he embodies the sociopath that he's been playing in the movie, and it makes people very uncomfortable, right? Okay, method acting versus just acting, right? Okay. So anyway, Stanislavski's, is it Stanislavski's acting, right? His method acting, Stanislav. All right. What is the golden rule of role play? Let's take a look. The golden rule of tabletop role: have fun. Fascinating. And again, I have heard this. Oh my Lord, I've heard this 1,000,000 times. The problem is, my fun and 5 of the people at the table's fun can be in conflict. And I've already admitted that early in my play days, I always put character before survival. I always put character before mechanics. And if I wanted to pilot the plane and I had no skills to do so, and I had a GM say, "Dude, you're not the most qualified to pilot," I said, "Look, my character doesn't fucking know that. He just sees the plane is crashing. He's going to dive into the seat and start pulling on a yoke." And if a GM basically told me I'm not qualified to pilot, listen, if the plane's going down, any human being with a brain in their head is going to dive into the pilot seat and attempt to pilot the fucking airplane, right? So, but this would, very often I played with groups that would alienate, that I would put my character's crazy person I'm not, right? I'm playing somebody I am not, ahead of surviving, especially in, say, an OSR dungeon crawl, right? So these are problems because that's my version of fun. Their version of fun was, "No, dude, we work as a team. We march through the dungeon. You have a role. When we say pick the lock, pick the damn lock. Outside of that, stay in the back. Don't get us in trouble, right? And by the way, don't steal from us, right? Don't you ever freaking pickpocket us, man." Well, there are guys in those groups that'll pickpocket. That's their way of having fun. Well, I don't like playing with guys that are player versus player. I don't want to play with a guy who wants to pickpocket and steal from his own party, right? But his fun is stealing from his party. That doesn't work for me. So, have fun. Holy shit, is this the worst advice I think you can give anybody? Because they're going to find themselves in conflict with their own group, and they won't know why, because they're having a blast. and 3 other people at the table would like to take them out back and whoop their ass, right? So this is not great advice, right? Have fun. Yeah, okay. Sounds like some corporate horse shit that you would read on D&D's website, right? Remember, everybody, have fun, right? Okay, no. Why do people role play? Stress relief? Me. Mood improve? No. Enhance self-esteem? No. I play for mostly enjoyment, fun, stress relief, and I love to explore character. So what would my female choleric who's seen her temple burn to the ground, how would she go about the rest of her life? Right? Would she resent her God for allowing her temple and her sisters to be destroyed by the dragon that she's searching for? That's her backstory. Then how will she deal with every moment that involves spiritual, right? Her God or spiritual awakening? Will she readily pray to her goddess for the power to heal tomorrow? Or will she tell her party, I ain't talking to that bitch, so we're going to have to get through the next few weeks without healing? You know what I mean? Would you put your character and her want to maybe throw her goddess to the wind? Meanwhile, the party's going, dude, we need your healing abilities, you bastard, right? There's an example of role play, character over mechanics. And I don't think we see this much at all, ever, actually. So, but I play for, obviously, I enjoy it. It's fun as hell. Stress relief, really. And I much prefer role-playing to reading. I much prefer role-playing to watching television, right? So, so for me, it's entertainment, right? And it's being with friends, social. Is it okay to role play as a child? What is the most common role play? Some role play rules. What are the 4 domains of play? Physical, cognitive, social, emotional, and language. Interesting. It's important educators understand this. Okay, so now we're getting more into what is role play as a psychological tool for teaching, etc. That's pretty cool. What are the 3 games of engagement? Attention, productivity, and transaction. Okay, well, that's interesting. Attention. Again, I'm not certain what this would be related to in actual gaming. What are the 6 pillars of character? Trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and that's great if you're playing the same kind of character. But what if I'm playing ruthless, greedy, irresponsible, and unfair? Right? So that's great, right? So this is actually of character, right? This is the argument about what is a good character. Well, this is character in general, not character in role play. Okay, what is lit role play? What is a lit role play? I'm not even. Anytime we're looking at slang, I'm avoiding lit role play. See ya. I don't care what defines role playing. Let's see here. To act out a role, to represent an action, students were asked to role play. Okay, I've seen that before. All right, so anyway, so we've just kind of taken a look here at what are the 4 pillars of acting. The literal, the want, the action, as if. Developed by playwright David Mamet. Love David Mamet's plays. The literal, the want, the action, and as if. And I can't speak. There it is. Stanislavski method of acting. I've read Stanislavski's book. I attempted to use some of those as a young actor, but I was pretty immature as someone as in the profession of acting. It was all pretty superficial to me, and therefore that's why I'm not an actor and I am somebody else in the world, because I was not mature enough to treat acting as an actual skill, so to speak. So of course my ability to act lasted about as long as my ability to show up for auditions, right? After a few auditions, realizing, I'm not cut out for this, right? Okay. My point is, I can't speak to this because I don't know. I have not read his practical aesthetics, and so I don't know what he means by the literal, the want, the action, and the as if. So I won't speak to that. But this would be for acting, not so much role playing. What are the 3 phases of role playing? There are 3 stages: the setup, the play, the discussion. So we agree when we set up a session, we're going to play D&D, we're going to play Greyhawk, and you're going to make characters in Greyhawk. You come somewhat informed about the maybe Greyhawk and what's going on in the world there. So at least when we talk about certain things, your character's not a complete imbecile, right, etc. If you're able to get your hands on that information. Then we play, right, and then the discussion, I suppose, would be post, right, post-play discussion. So that's more, that would be more of, you know, or maybe they're referring to setting up the scene. You know, this is introduced by the GM describing the role or describing the situation, where you're at, who's in the room, etc. And then we go, and I say, well, I want to go talk to the king, so I will approach the king in deference, head down, you know, palms together, and I will bow to the king the minute I get within his eye shot, you know, and I describe my actions as I approach the king, and then maybe the role play. I don't know exactly what they mean here, but what is the three pillar theory? The pillars of intimacy in theater. What is the law of role playing? Law of role playing? Holy shit, I have a problem with this. Law? Okay, let's see what it says. Maybe I'll agree with it. Okay, suggests the individuals often present themselves in a way that aligns with the perceived social expectations, essentially wearing a mask to fit the particular role and make desired impression. There's more. Okay, so this is be believable, right? The law of role playing is, hey, if you want to teach your employees how to sell cars, and you've taught them the 9 points, and you've walked them through all of that, and now we're going to role play. I'm going to go outside, and I'm going to get in the parking lot. I'm going to pretend to drive in, and I'm going to pretend to be walking through the parking lot looking at the cars, and you're going to approach me. I need to put on the mask of the resentful, bitter, middle-aged guy whose wife just, I mean, whatever the case, whatever background I have to build for myself, but I have to wear that mask believably, or I'm doing a disservice to their training. I can't just immediately say, yeah, I love it, let's go, I want to buy this car, you're so good. No, I've got to wear a believable mask and make them use their 9 points of training. So I would agree this is true. Now, do we have to be this way in a role-playing table? Well, I've done this before, right, where I put my characters' decision-making ahead of the mechanics. I put my characters want to be greedy ahead of keeping the party alive, right? And again, there will be people who say, don't be an asshole, don't be the dick, right? Well, I didn't perceive it as being a dick. I perceived it as being true to my character. But I would argue that this is the problem. Is it a law, right? I think we have to be flexible. It becomes the theory of role-playing, right? The law. But I get it. If you're going to train properly your employees, you've got to put on a mask and stick to it so they can go through the 9 points to sell. And then at the end, I can tell them what they did right and what they did wrong. They don't have to actually sell me a car, but we need to go through the whole process. So they're going to run into stumbling blocks. The fourth point, they're not real good at the fourth point, and that's a place for us to work on so we can make it easier for them when they deal with a guy who for the fourth time says, your damn cars are too expensive. They've got to come up with a way to work around that particular no, right? But in role-playing, it doesn't work that way. I mean, again, we're not trying to teach you how to manipulate people into buying a car, right? We're trying to be a character dealing with a dragon, you know, in a room or something, right? Okay, so again, maybe this has been too long, maybe it's too much. My point is this. Over the last few years, I have greatly enjoyed the return to role-play as a player mostly in OSR, in the Joth campaigns. I've also enjoyed DMing our game, Dark Age of Man, and I've enjoyed playing characters in our game, completely different. I embody the role in Dark Age of Man because Dark Age of Man has the rules about survival. Dark Age of Man does not set up the idea that, hey, that this is all about party, this is all about, you're not playing in a group of treasure hunters, kind of murder hobo concepts. I'm playing whatever I say I am. I am a lord. I have a manor. I have, and I am whatever, right? And so I can kind of set that character up in the world if I follow the mechanics of Prestige, and everybody there will have to accept my character's role. They don't have to, right? And so Dark Age of Man, for me, is a role-playing game. You have the opportunity to create the human being you would like to play. And then we go for it, right? So, in D&D, I'm rolling up randomly and selecting a class, and we're going to be part of a unit. We're going to be part of a party, part of this goal-centered, treasure-hunting, monster-killing group. So, how much of that do I have to push my character out of the way for the sake of the survival, right? So again, not all role playings are these two things. By the way, there's a million role playing games that all feature different mechanics toward role play or toward survival, or survival may not even be an issue, right? Many role playing games have nothing to do with life and death and killing monsters. So, but you get my point. My point is, I also come away saying I'm doing less acting. I'm doing less. Emoting. I'm doing less a character in front of the guys online, but I'm still always making decisions generally from the character, right? Who is this character? What he's about? But I don't do it in a vacuum now. I'll think, hey, wait, Fex is aware that he's part of a treasure hunting group in a very dangerous situation. I'll still be Fex, but I wouldn't have Fex do things he knows is necessarily that he wouldn't understand is life-threatening, right? If that makes sense, right? Fex is a professional. And that's something I've learned over the last 5 years or so of being a player more and less of a GM. That what is it that I'm having to do in, say, OSR that I don't have to do in, say, Dark Age of Man, right? Because Dark Age of Man, we're agreeing there's this world that exists in front of us that we can all play a role in. And that world is built to support the non-violent. It's also built to support the violent. And so we can find a place to be successful in Dark Age of Man despite the nature of the world. It's a dark, dangerous world. Violence is there, but you don't have to navigate your character through it with a sword and a shield, right? Okay. Anyway, it's also has a different. It's a completely different animal as far as. So, Symbaroum, right? I played it, I GM'd it very much like I've always GM'd. I love Symbaroum. What I like about Symbaroum is I get to GM it the way I like to GM. However, for me, it was less sandboxy and there was more sense of what we're going to, what they're going to deal with tonight, right? It was more, for me as a GM, there were more data points that I wanted to make sure were in front of the players to engage in. But Symbaroum is player facing, right? They're rolling all the dice. They have, that kind of control, right? And I don't have to sweat those things as a GM in Symbaroum. I don't roll the dice. I declare the actions of the monsters or of the NPCs, and they roll the dice. And so that was liberating for me as a GM, right? I get to be the GM, but I don't have to sweat any dice, right? Which is a wonderful thing for me as I've evolved as a GM to a hands-off GM, somebody who doesn't really want to roll dice. I don't want to be rolling behind a screen. I do, but I mean it's not I've evolved more as a GM than as a player. What I'm learning as a player is I'm not so into the acting as I am into embodying the character. And I don't have to necessarily act or put on an act. And I don't know, again, depending on who you're playing with, how appreciative that is. Now, if we want to talk about meta, I still prefer there's less meta conversation and more focused dialogue and communication pertaining to the situation at hand, not the mechanics of the game. And I've said this before, the more fluent I am with the game, the less I feel that there's meta conversation. When I'm learning a new game, I feel it's a lot of meta because we're learning the game, or I'm learning the game. So I'm going to use terms, etc. So one reason I prefer OSR is that, take us back to the old D20, is I've got that stuff memorized. I can role play with very little meta conversation in an OSR game, right? There's always going to be the cues. Let's roll initiative, make a saving throw. Those are mechanical cues that I don't resent. I'm okay with meta. I'm okay with the game existing. And this is something that I didn't think was true for me 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I think I used to have an issue. I used to think I had an issue with the game, with the mechanics showing up in play. And what's happened is I've learned to role play and accept the mechanics. And some of that came from exposure as a player to Star Trek, and some of the exposure to being a GM. To being a player more or less GM. As a GM, I always wanted players to let me do the heavy lifting. I'll do the mechanical heavy lifting. You guys just be characters and dive in. I was trying to make role-playing the first option for players, and the mechanics, I would handle the heavy lifting. And the irony is, as a GM, I've gotten where I don't want to do any heavy lifting as a GM. I don't really want to be in control. I want to have the ability to put in front of them a live world that they can respond to, and I don't really care how much they want to engage the mechanics. So it's like my experiences have completely changed what I want to be as a GM. And as a player, I'm also recognizing I don't mind the game itself existing. That doesn't mean I want to spend the whole time talking about dice and being out of character, etc. No, no, no. I want to be in character. I want to be involved, but I'm okay with roll initiative, make a saving throw. It doesn't take me out of the suspension of disbelief, so to speak. So, is there an ideal pathway? That's like have fun. When somebody says, "Hey, have fun." Oh, the first rule of role playing is have fun. Well, there can be the second rule of role playing is the ideal pathway to role play. It's gonna be different for everybody. So finding that kind of perfect table where everybody shares that exact paradigm for what their ideal situation is, their ideal meta. If somebody said to me, Jason, ideally right now as a player, what would you like the balance to be? Well, I prefer 80% role play, 20% meta, 20% mechanics, right? I think that would have been 10 years ago. I would have told you that. I really want to be 90% role play, and I don't want any mechanical stuff in my way, right? I would rather when I was playing in Ivan's, Lamentations campaign, I would have been content with him making all my die rolls for me. I would have been happy as shit if he would have picked up the D6 and made the D6 search roll for me in private. If he would have made the combat roll for me in private. I just wanted to embody Jurgen, right? And I kind of resented being interrupted to, hey, Jason, roll a D6 here. I was so in character, really, that I didn't. I would have liked it if he rolled all the dice. So that'll tell you where I was when I first dived into being a player with Ivan and Anthony, those guys. Mechanics, as a GM, I was so much mechanic laden. I'd want to do it for the players to make it easy for them, take the load off of them. So as a player, I kind of wanted to just be a character. I wanted to be a role player. And yes, obviously mechanics matter and you have to be aware of them. But I would have been okay with him making my sneak checks or making my, every roll for my character and just feeding me the information to let me know I failed the roll. Right? Oh, Jason, dude, you failed badly looking for the stone in the snow. He could have just described, you've been on your hands and knees for 15 minutes digging through the snow. You'll never find that rock. I would have known. And as Jurgen, I would have reacted, right? So that would have been, to me, that would be ideal role play, right? That I do very little mechanical part of the game, right? Which is one reason I love simple games, because the biggest obstacle is, hey, Jace, make that D6 roll and see if you shoot the pirate. And I pick it up, I drop the D6, I know instantly whether I hit the pirate or not, and we move on to the next phase of conversation, right? So, all right, this has been a long conversation about role play, looking it up. I don't know how much I've learned versus how much I've just expressed my opinions, so maybe this was not ideal, but I have had a lot of time to think about the last few years and what I've really enjoyed about it, and how I've changed my expectations of role play, what I'm still looking for in games, what I'm looking for in the experience as a player versus a GM. They are completely different roles for me. And like I said, I've retired from GMing once before. I've definitely curbed my GMing duties in the world of my hobby. And I've played a lot more the last 10 years than I've ever have. But I'm aware how much my GMing changed. In writing Dark Age of Man, I was writing a game engine built for the change of my habits in GMing. So it's like, okay, I know what I want to do as a GM and I know how I want to do it. So I'm going to have to write a system that supports this kind of ideal. So I did. Dell and I did. And for what it is, right? But I've not written a role-playing game from the perspective of role-playing, from the perspective of being a character in this universe. And I think that just, so much of what we do is habitual, and so much of what we are is habitual. Some people are just really good at role playing, and they couldn't tell you why or how. It's just no, it's natural for them. It doesn't, there's others like myself that spend time reflecting on this hobby and how to do it better, or how to do it better. So again, that's a relative term. How to do it differently than the experience I've been having. When you're frustrated, you're either going to quit or you're going to say, what the hell can I do to make this not frustrating? And if you're having a blast, but people don't seem to like you, then you gotta reflect back and say, what am I doing at the table that's pissing off my colleagues, right? And that's self-reflection. You have to understand that. And this is why so many of us are engaged. I'm not so much engaged in telling you how to play, so much as I'm engaged in sharing my experiences. I don't want to be the guy who says, hey, you're doing this wrong. I want to be the guy that says, hey, I've been doing what you've been doing for a long time, and I've had some great sessions. However, this is what happened to me. I realized that putting character before mechanics alienated many of the guys that play that style of game, and then not alienating my friends made it easier for us all to have a good time, right? So it just depends on the kind of person you are, I guess, right? The how-to guy or the sharing experiences guy. So, all right, everybody, have a great, great week. Bye-bye.